Angie,
John,
are you an authoritative coach?
interesting question. What do you mean?
Do you take charge in your sessions? Are you looked up to, respected by your clients, do you think?
Geez, I hope so.
Should we have a chat with an expert, see what it really means to be an authoritative coach?
Absolutely.
Welcome to the Coaching Clinic with John and Angie.
The show for professional coaches who want to develop their skills and grow their business.
Follow the show on your favorite podcast app.
And join us every Wednesday for new episodes.
Let's kick open the doors to the Coaching Clinic and introduce our very first ever guest. We're used to chatting here in the studio, just me and Angie. It's very nice to welcome Chris Marr, who is the author of the book, The Authoritative Coach. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Angie. Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
Hello
I feel like
there.
a special guest coming into the first interview. This is awesome. I love it.
It's uncharted territory for the Coaching Clinic, but we're very happy to have you with us. And your book is certainly an intriguing book. And I had heard you being interviewed on another show and I was checking out your profile as well. But I really enjoyed the book because it's very straightforward. It's nothing's really dressed up in it, and you pretty direct and to the point on things without adding anything that just doesn't need to be there. Let's first of all maybe kick off and clarify our terms of what do you mean by an authoritative coach and why is that important?
Yeah, I think this is a great place to start. It's not an easy word, and I don't think that for a lot of people, they've never said it before, right? Authoritative or authoritative coach. It does take a bit of, you have to get your tongue moving around a little bit for it. But I think the word choice is really important because the word authority, I think, has a lot of negative connotation, right? A lot of people think about it as like power over other people. I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it type of thing, like a parent-child type relationship. And I think that's not it. That's not what we mean by authoritative. Authoritative means somebody who is respected as an expert, someone who can guide in an expert way to get people to help people with a specific problem or overcome a challenge that they're having, right? So the whole idea is to be able to be grounded in competence and confidence in a way where your ego isn't getting in the way. In other words, it's not about power over, but it's about using your competence and your skills and your expertise in a way where you're saying to yourself, I know exactly what to do and I know how to help you to get there. And you use all of that to build trust in that relationship so you can be authoritative, so you can be the right type of authority in the relationship with the client. That's how I look at it.
Did you have some challenges with this yourself, or was it more something you noticed from other coaches?
Oh, yeah. Like you know what they talk about, live the book before you write the book type of situation. And there's no question that like I've been through my own turmoil and tension and frustrations around all of this. I remember one time I realized my biggest lesson came from watching my coach coaching others, right? So this is an in-person event where he's coaching experts on a stage and I'm watching him do it. And I'm like, how does he know what to say? How does he know how to give them guidance and advice? And it's almost like he's at this magic trick where he knows this exactly what they need to hear. He's saying exactly the right thing. He's asking the exact right questions. And the big lesson for me, to cut a long story short, was that, oh, I figured this out. I'm trying to be right all the time. I'm making this all about me. And so when as a younger coach, I'm going into these situations and I'm nervous and anxious and starting to people please and hedge my own expertise because I'm wrapped up in the whole thing, right? And so there's this, just watching someone do it well, you realize that they've not got a stake in this. It's not about them. It's really about seeing past all of that and getting over yourself, essentially. And when you let go of that pressure that you're putting on yourself, you can actually turn up as a better version of yourself, as a better coach for your clients. So that was a big shift for me. I had to do a lot of, and I think most people have to do quite a lot of inner work to figure this out for themselves, right? Because people pleasing and need to be liked comes from you making a lot of assumptions about what other people think of you and then changing yourself to be more acceptable to them, right? In coaching, I would be like, oh, I can't say this to John because I might annoy him or frustrate him, or he might not like me, or I can't tell him about this mistake that he's about to make, or I can't tell Angie that the quality of the work that she's doing is poor right now because I'm afraid that she might get annoyed. Or there's like this hedging of it all, and it all comes from like this idea that you need to be liked over you need to be respected. And so the inner work, just to complete that loop, the inner work is actually your need to be liked. You can overcome your need to be liked by increasing your own self-respect. So your need to be liked is something that you're taking from the external world. Your self-respect and self-assuredness comes from working on yourself and your values and what you believe and how you want to turn up in the world. And the people that we respect the most, we respect them because they turn up in the same way every time. Like I've heard this from my clients before as well, where they'll say, I know, like they're coming into a session with me knowing exactly what's about to happen. Like, I'm about to challenge you on this thing that you're doing is clearly a distraction, or I'm about to challenge you on this, do you know? And they know that's why they come. They don't come for me to say, you know what, you're right, John, you're absolutely right. Yes, John. That's not it. They've got plenty of people like that in their life. They want somebody that's actually going to not be a yes person. So I think there's a lot, that to me is like the whole idea at a high level.
Yeah.
I think a lot of coaches, though, and tell me what you all think, you talk about this, right? I think that earlier in careers, when you're more green, many coaches come into the space feeling this obligation to be the hero. They feel like they're supposed to save this person, that they're supposed to solve the problems for them. And that is like the kiss of death when you're a coach. Because I don't know what you charge, but I used to say, I don't want to charge you $500 for a cup of coffee. You want actual results here. And I think I think a lot of coaches have a hard time segueing from, let me show you how either important I am, or let me show you the way I want to save you, I want to help you, into that digging. That's really going to bring about results.
Yeah. There's this rule in coaching, or I don't know if it's a rule in coaching, a rule in teaching. Coaching, teaching adults, it's the same thing, I guess. There's a lot of overlap there. But I stole this from a client of mine, and she says, never take the pencil. And I think this is like a really good rule of thumb, a good behavior is like, look, I'm not going to do the work for you, but I'm going to help you get out of your own way so you can do it at your highest potential. And I think it's a good rule of thumb, but I think it emphasizes, how do you approach the work with your client where you're not going to do it for them, but you're going to figure out, I think it's great, Angie, I think, because there's a lot of other things in there. So for example, you could work with a client who has a problem, but they don't treat it seriously. You end up caring more about the problem than they do. So what ends up happening is you do more of the work than they do, and then they see you as, or treat you like an employee as opposed to an expert, right? This diminishes your authority because they're just expecting you to do something for them, right? And it becomes a sort of transactional relationship as opposed to a transformational relationship. You become a dependent rather than indispensable. And I think these are all these spectrums are, you're almost temperature gauging where your relationship is with your client and on these spectrums. So I think all those things apply as well. And yeah, I think a lot about this idea of like rescuing. Like a good example of this is, can you sit with a client who's clearly having real difficulty with something and not feel like you need to jump in and save them from themselves, right? So a client comes to you and says, Chris, we've been working together for 6 months and I still don't feel like we're getting the results that we really should be getting. And so your radar's going off, right? And you're like, oh God, this is awkward, this is difficult. And so you just jump in, you're like, yeah, we've done all this great stuff together, just need to give it a bit more time. Yeah, and you start to justify yourself, and those people pleasing stuff's all coming out of you because you don't want to risk the relationship, you don't want them to walk away, all of that stuff. Whereas a good self-assured coach is going to say, why didn't you tell me sooner? Like, how long has this been going on for? What do you think we missed? They've come to you with a problem. Your job is to help solve it, help work them through it. It's difficult, it's frustrating, there's tension in the relationship, but can you be the source of clarity and assuredness, and can you stay in that place, that professional space, and help them work through it. And I think we're playing with a lot of that, Angie, as well, like just making sure we understand what's my role as the coach in all of this, and can I play that role well here in high stakes situations, under challenging situations, and even when a client is coming into a session with you and blaming you for their own problems.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, it was coming to mind. John knows me. I get these things that just pop up while we're doing the episode. And I'm like, "Ah." And I literally, I had a long-term coaching relationship with somebody at one point, and it was great. It was challenging. We were uncovering, and then we were together for a while, like a couple of years. And the bigger issues, it really took that long for the bigger issues to bloom. And when we got to that point, that client, I don't know, a couple of sessions into this specific work was like, "You're not helping me. Why isn't it working anymore?" And I had to put on a different cap, and I had to say, all right, wait a minute. Defending myself is not going to work here. And it's really into what you're saying. I don't think of it as a pencil. I always think of it as, I'm a surgeon. I'm doing open heart surgery here. And at no time do I want that client to get up off the table, right? I can't be distracted. I have to do the work I'm here to do. I have to stay laser focused. And I came back and said, at the time, why do you think it's so hard? Yeah. Why are you feeling so frustrated? I had to remain the coach. I couldn't feed into whatever emotion, and it was getting harder, which happens, right? We know that as coaches, John, right? When the work gets harder, sometimes we get resistance and tomatoes thrown at us, right? What are you doing? So we have to stay the course. We have to remain the pace car.
I think that's one of the reasons for me why, as early on in my coaching career, I was only as good a coach as my last session for that, and that was for a while, because it was that thing of me putting the pressure on myself that I was the solution, not them. Yeah. And so if things were working well and I was able to help them and solve things for them, that was a good session. If I wasn't, or there was resistance, or things didn't really go according to plan, or they didn't like what I had to say, that was a bad session. And that went on for a long time until I realized that that shouldn't be happening, and that it wasn't really to do with that, and to take this position. Was there a sort of wake up point for you where you recognized, Chris, that it was like, I can see that I'm doing too much for them and trying to make them happy? And what was that? What action did you take?
Yes, great. Yeah, I think so. I think it was probably more of an evolution than like a light switch. I think it was an evolution of things for me. Part of my journey or my story is that I've been a coach for about 15 years in some capacity. I didn't always call myself a coach, but that's ultimately what I was doing. I think identity is key here, right? In other words, as soon as I knew that I was supposed to be a coach, I became a coach, right? It's like, there's a big part of that in there. It's about accepting that is it, and how to be great at that thing, as opposed to kind of hedging on it. I think that happened for me. I think that ironed out for me only a few years ago. I went to do a master's in counseling thinking that is where I should be going. And I didn't complete the course. I stayed there for about 9 months, and that just helped me realize that's not it. And I absolutely should be a coach. And then I produced the book, and then obviously went all in on that thing. But I think a big part of this evolution was, I don't know any other way to say it other than reps and volume. I just think that a big part of this is about getting exposed to difficult situations that you have to figure out how to deal with. The amount of mistakes that I've made to figure that out you could just go on and on. If it was a tattoo, it'd be like right down my arm, essentially. It's like, there's all these mistakes. And I think the one thing that I did well, John, was learn from every single one. Like, every mistake was documented. I got feedback on call recordings, and I had someone telling me, like, do you see what's happening here? You did this. What would it have looked like if you did that instead? And it's like trying to move through this. So like that feedback loop. And it's interesting to me that this is a long answer, but I think this is the truth for me, essentially, is that even as a younger coach, do you know what the gap was? It was skills. It was skill development. I have to that's what it is. And the quicker, like, anyone that's listening to this is like a young coach, like you said, green, just coming to this for the first time. I think the best thing you can do is understand that coaching is there's a toolbox of skills that you need to develop. And the quicker you realize that, I think the faster your journey will be to being a great coach. It's skills that I need to collect and develop and practice. Cool. So how do I open up a coaching session? How do I deal with resistance? How do I ask the right questions? How do I close a coaching session? All of these are just, and I don't want to underplay it because it's really important, but it's just skills. In other words, we're taking away the mystery of it all, right? It's just like, you've got to collect these skills, you've got to practice them. But I think what underpins this is 2 or 3 things, which is absolute, like, deliberate practice, the want and need to be world class at what you do. And when deliberate practice, not just reps and volume or quantity, I mean, you're picking skills and you're deploying them in moments deliberately. So you're saying, I want to ask better questions in coaching. So I'm like, what are those questions? And then I'm using them and I'm practicing them, and it's very deliberate. And then I think reps, volume over time, you just wrap all of that up. I think you evolve very quickly as a coach. And I think the one dial that was missing for me in my journey was understanding that it's skill development. If I knew 15 years ago that it was skills, that was so very clearly that I need to develop skills, I think I would have picked that up a lot faster. And so I think it's evolutionary. You get better over time as you master the craft, and you start to realize that, right, I'm diminishing my own authority here as an expert because I'm still writing these blog articles for my clients. I should be teaching them how to fish rather than giving them a fish. And I think as you get older, I don't want to say that it's age, but there's a level of maturity, say. I think that maturity could come for somebody in 6 months. It could take 60 years for somebody else, perhaps. But you get to a point where you realize that, oh, my job, the best, like, the role that I play for the client is to help them to succeed at their highest potential. I'm behind the curtain. And there's, I think, a lot of this philosophy of coaching. If you want to be a great coach, I think you have to obsess over it as well. I know I've given you a long answer here. I don't know that there's a very specific point to where I learned how to be or to mature as a coach, other than I feel like it's evolutionary, like all the time growing. It's like a consistent growth.
Which is what we want. We're personal development professionals after all. Our personal growth is
obsessed with it.
Yeah, part of our personal growth is also our client. Like, our growth benefits our clients, and often vice versa as well.
100%.
I love what Chris said about the toolbox, because that's like a little bit of because I used to train coaches, right? For a company that I worked for, I was a coach, but I also trained the coaches. And I'd say to them, like, we're giving you the tool belt with the tools, and we're going to show you how to use, but it's up to you to actually perfect that. And not that I believe in perfection. I'm not trying to say that, by the way, but I think there's an intentionality about being a coach. I think that many coaches that first start out are so focused on getting clients, and they get 1, they get 2, they get 3, and they're, yay, this is so exciting, that they forget about what's going on within the session, because now they're a business owner too. So I think it like shifts the lens a little bit. But I think being a great coach is about intentionality, as you're saying, within every session, right? Being the authority for sure, and creating the rapport, building the trust so that you can. And you have to do that with you have to show up. You have to be who you are in that role every single time.
Yeah, understanding who you are and accepting yourself for who you are, and not dimming down who you are. Like, I say it as a sort of a disarming. I say I'm too much for some people. I'm okay with that. You could figure that out as we go through this, but I'm just a lot. I go fast. You're gonna have to keep up with me. So I've had this with most of my clients. I'll say, you're gonna have to keep up with me. And one of my clients said, no, Chris, you're gonna have to keep up with me. It's happened once. Everybody else is, and I'm okay with it as long as you're okay with it. In other words, I'm not going to change the style, the way that I approach my coaching, because you can handle a certain aspect of it, right? We'll work through that together, but this is me. You're getting me, and I hope that over time you will continue to get a very true version of how I help in these circumstances. I'm not going to change that. I think what you were getting at there, Angie, sorry, I want to pick this up, is because this is what I'm obsessed with, is the craft of coaching. Okay, so there's a lot of, you guys know this, the world is full of people helping you to get 7-figure coaching businesses, leads, sales, traffic, all of that stuff. I've broken away, like there's plenty of options available for that. But what I don't think there is enough of is people helping with the craft of being more coach-like in your work. And that's what I do. I've just tried to just stay in my lane and be like, I'm going to teach you the craft of being more coach-like. So coaches, consultants, client-facing professionals, leaders, right? Because the coaching skills apply and transfer directly into leadership as well. And so just to pick up on what you're saying there, because I think it's important that there's the business of coaching and then there's the craft of being a great coach. And they're not the same thing.
It's the distinction we've aimed to make a bunch of times on this show as well. And certainly we've had some conversation about coaching skills, coaching, the difference between having your business and actually what we do in the sessions still, and keep growing and developing as coaches. You mentioned in your book that you're a reformed consultant. We often talk about this, or the element of being consultative as coaches, and how that often ends up creeping into our coaching. And you recognize that was pretty much all you were doing. So is consultation still a part of what you do, or have you moved more to the sort of purist coaching style now?
This is such a moving beast for me. I think I'm always asking myself like this question. So I think the idea here, just for the audience as well, is that there's this idea that there's a seesaw, right? An equilibrium somewhere between coaching and consulting. And it's like having the right tool and using the right tool at the right time. When do I need to be a coach? When do I need to be a consultant? A coach says, like you were saying, Angie, right? Why are you finding this so difficult? What do you think the main problem is? A coach is digging. A consultant says, here's exactly what you need to do. Right. Now, based on my experience, there's a time and a place for both of those things. It's just not at the same time. In other words, you don't want to have your seesaw in equilibrium. You're fully coaching or you're fully consulting in a particular moment. You're not hedging between the two, is what I'm saying. And so that's a big lesson, just knowing when. Now, for example, I've had pushback on this before from, I would probably argue, purist coaches, which is you're not supposed to give your client advice. Right. And I was like, okay, so I'm not teaching you how to be a purist coach. I'm teaching you how to use your expertise to help your client get the result they're looking for. It's a different thing. So there's times, though, when your expertise must absolutely be communicated in a straightforward way. For example, if your client's about to drive off a cliff, you're not going to sit there and go, so if you turn left here, what could happen, do you think? It's like you're not going to self-discover they're about to run off a cliff, right? You're going to say, hey, look, I need to stop you here. What I don't want to see happen here is that if you do this, my concern is this, okay? So let's talk about that. Then it's back to coach mode, right? So you're like quickly in with the consultant and then back into coach mode for what are we going to do with this type of thing. It's like with feedback as well. It's like you need to, at some point, as an expert, you need to be able to very straightforwardly communicate in a way that's going to land your expertise, or your expert recommendation is how I would say it. So based on everything I've heard today, here's exactly what we need to do. Now that we know what to do, let's talk about how we're going to make it happen. Who's going to do it? What could get in our way? Then you're the coach again, right? So there's this balancing act between the consultant and the coach. And I think it's about deployment at the right time, based on the relationship, based on what's actually happening in the moment. So I've had clients that are under, like, not my clients, expert consultants who are under duress, or there's a lot of tension. A good example would be, been working with a client for a couple of years and you've become too familiar. I talk about this idea of familiarity breeds contempt. You're too accessible. You can be a prophet to the world, but no one will listen to you in your own town. This idea that you've become too familiar, too accessible. And so the client starts to push back, doesn't take your advice, doesn't follow your guidance, doesn't answer your emails. Like you're starting to become ignorable in this relationship. And that might be a time where you may be like, I need to step into consultant mode and say, look, if we continue down this path, this is what's going to happen. None of us want that, do we? And they say, no, we don't want that. So here's exactly what we need to do to make sure this won't be true for us. We need to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, that's the plan. Anyone disagree with that? Anyone got any questions? Cool. We all in agreement then, this is what's going to happen. Yes. Okay. then back into coach mode, right? So some examples of how I see it now, having written the book. That particular chapter is probably 2.5 years old now or something since first writing, and having gone from coaching businesses to coaching consultants and coaches, I think my view or opinion has changed somewhat. It's evolved into that neither of them are bad or good. They're both tools. They're both personas, both roles that you play in the relationship. But you need to be very, I think, aware of which one is needed, and also be aware of where you're using the wrong one, and or if you're in one mode for too much of the other. And I think that's the truth. And you know what's funny about talking about all this? There's so much potential contradiction in all of these lessons. So a lot of people want absolutes. There isn't really any absolutes in communication. There's contradictions, but I would just reword that as the right tool at the right time.
Coaching can be quite an intuitive process for
Right.
many people, right? So you do have to make the calls as you go along, because as you said, there's no one way that a coaching session is going to go.
Sure.
It can go in any number of different ways.
Yeah.
But this does feel relevant to me. Like, I know that I would probably pre-frame a lot of, and I think Angie as well, we've had this chat before, pre-frame how coaching sessions are going to be set up, how they're going to run. Do you do that with, this is what coaching is, this is how sessions are generally going to run as well?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you some examples of that for sure. Yeah. I think there's one other thing I want to add there before I do that, is that there's this idea of who determines the value of a coaching session, right? The easy answer would be the client. The client will tell you if it's valuable or not. But actually, the way you turn up, the pace, the sense of urgency, the importance, the value that you're bringing, the style, like all of that, do I turn up in a way that makes it feel important? I think the coach plays a lot more. I think we start to learn that it's our job to determine the value of the session or of the work that we're doing or the relationship. And I think it's so important to recognize that sometimes what this means is that your expectations actually need to go up. Like, you need to have higher expectations of yourself and of the client, and your tolerance needs to go down. In other words, your tolerance for excuses. So a client will come in and say, "Oh, but you never told me that." And it's, no, that's not it. You're not putting this on me. This is not, you don't blame me for stuff. That's not what happens here. So it's like, there's this sort of like increase in expectations and reducing tolerance creates this space, I think, for more of the consultative approach, which means, let's move faster. Can we get there in more of a straight line? Can we get the result? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like there's a pacing and a sense of urgency. I think that's a nuance in there as well. But in terms of pre-framing the relationship, I think it's a really important call. I call this the Vanguard principle, which is essentially like having a flashlight that you use to see ahead, many steps ahead of the path you're about to walk down, and what are the problems that could get in the way of that relationship. So the exercise here is to write down all the things that go wrong in the relationship in the first six months, all the things that could stop us from making progress, from being successful, and you bring them to the front and get ahead of problems before they become problems. So this whole idea is like being proactive about preventable problems in the relationship. So, for example, one question might be something like, have you ever hired a coach before? What did you like? What didn't you like? What do you think our relationship needs to be successful? That's a good vanguard. In other words, we're talking about the relationship. Now, you need to know what you want them to say. So if they say something like, I want to be challenged, you say, what do you mean by that exactly? You know that's good. But they might not say accountability, for example, and you need to talk about it because we have different ideas of what that is. So we say, how would you describe in your own words the idea of accountability? I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. And they're like, I expect somebody to chase me up every week for my work. And I'm like, that's not it. So we need to talk about that, right? So you got to check in on all the things. You become an expert at setting the conditions for success in the relationship and the work that we're doing. So there's another word for these, by the way, which is boundaries. But ultimately, you're setting the conditions for success in the relationship and the work by getting ahead of problems before they become problems, reducing friction, and ultimately setting the client up for success and you up to be the best coach that you can be in the relationship. I think it's a massively important thing to do well. And I think if you don't do it well in the beginning, ends up it ends up becoming to your disadvantage in the long run. So the whole idea is that if you do it at the beginning, the client doesn't even know there's going to be problems, but you do. So you get ahead of them, it becomes your advantage. But if you leave it too long, it becomes their advantage into your disadvantage. And I think it's critically important to deploy the Vanguard principle at the beginning, to do it well, and that you continue to improve how you Vanguard the relationship and the work over time. You should just get better and better at it. Every new client should be set up better than the previous one based on all the stuff that you've learned about how to make the relationship set up for success.
But it circles all the way back to creating intentionality, right? You can't come into a coaching session just like willy-nilly by accident. Let's just see what falls out or what shakes out this week. Like you're not really determining anything. You're just setting the stage for it. You're being intentional. You've got a bit of a game plan. You have an idea of what path, where do we go? There's a million paths that we as coaches can choose. And I think sometimes we leave too much up to the client. They hired us, but we can't just be there and show up and go, no matter what I say or do, they're going to think this is great. Maybe for a little while until the shine comes off the apple. And then they're like, where's the value in this? Yeah.
It's a really important point. I think there's lots to this idea of the Vanguard, but there's one other thing that I think is really important is that we're always we're continually stretching the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So I just call this raising the stakes. So really what we want to do is, again, it's all about self-discovery, right? I'm not telling the client what they're going to do. I'm getting them to tell me what they want and why they want it. And it's what is the real problem that we're trying to solve here? And why is that a problem for you? And how's that holding you back? And you're really just making a mountain out of a molehill for them because you know that you're going to be the one guiding them up the mountainside to get them to where they want to go. And I think I do see that this is a majorly missing gap in a lot of work that coaches and consultants do, is they think exactly what you said, Angie. It's like, oh, they see me as an expert. I think they'll just pay me money and then we'll get stuck in. And then they start missing sessions. They start deprioritizing the work that you're doing. And you realize that you just didn't do the work at the beginning to raise the stakes around this. Like a good scenario would be that you have that discussion with them and then they say, actually, now that we've been through it, I don't think this is a priority for me right now. And I think I want to revisit it in 6 months. You're like, great. That's fantastic for both of us because then we won't be wasting our time. We can come back when it's actually a hot topic for you and something that you actually want to do. And so I think we have more of a role to play in raising the stakes, not defining perhaps what's at stake, but helping the client to articulate the stakes. That's our job because we want it to feel important. We want it to feel meaningful. If it doesn't feel important or meaningful, they will not do it. So I think our job is we have to raise the stakes. We have to manufacture it through the right questions and the stuff that we're talking about today. I think it's really important.
Yeah, we're setting them up for the journey. Let me ask you, you talk about moving away from people pleasing, and partly also that encompasses challenging your clients and in good and healthy ways.
Sure.
You in the book talk about radical candor, and enough to have 2 chapters on it. That this is being one of the most important points of being that person who is going to say what really needs to be said. And you say you don't want them going off the cliff. We sometimes need to step in and intervene, but we sometimes need to tell them what they most really need to hear. And that may make us unliked. But we've talked about this to some degree on the show before. Coaches, especially newer coaches, but a lot of coaches, even very experienced ones, struggle with this to the point of, does radical candor mean being a bit of an asshole to your clients? Or does it mean just being really direct and just saying, you know what, there's something kind of staring out at me here that I think maybe no one's going to say to you? That we need to be like the Simon Cowell in Pop Idol saying, you know what, maybe it just wasn't that good actually, and there wasn't a great performance for me.
Yeah. So I think I always talk about, I sign off all my emails, all my content with right. That's the mission. The mission is to help you as a coach to feel confident and competent with the skills to just say what needs to be said. Now, one of the things I think is really important before we talk about radical candor is that's your job. The reason we've got too many yes people in our life already. You don't need to be another one. Your job is to literally have a POV, a point of view, an opinion about what, that's a big part of why you get paid, is to have a perspective, right? And so if you can't say what, that's going to diminish your authority with your clients, right? And so I think, just goes without, just to say, it's your job to do that, right? But then if you think, okay, fine, how do I feel more confident doing it? Well, you go, okay, what's the skill that I need to learn in order to feel more confident saying what I see in a way that it lands, right? And that's where radical candor comes in. And so for those that are unfamiliar with radical candor, it's a quadrant, right? So you've got two axes. The vertical axis is how much do I care about the other, right? I'm not sure if you can swear on this podcast or not.
You can.
How much do I give a shit would be the simple way. And the horizontal axis is how willing am I to piss somebody off? And it's the balance between giving a shit and pissing someone off is where radical candor's found. The arsehole quadrant, which is the obnoxious aggressive quadrant, is the quadrant where you're very capable of challenging directly, but it feels like a gut punch when you say it. So it's not nice. You will probably get the result, but I don't feel good about it. And this is where radical candor is like at the listener's ear as opposed to the person speaking. So it's how it's received. So I've got a client, for example, that forwards all her emails to her asshole checker before she sends it, so that she knows that her emails are actually high caring and direct, right? So she forwards it to an app, it rewords her email for her. So it says, hey, look, I know that you and I, we both want this to be done on time. It's really important for you. It's like, it's a bit more of the we and us in this as opposed to what I want, right? So how do you get out the asshole quadrant? In my experience, having taught radical candor to literally hundreds of people in different professions, is that most people, there's only about 20% of people who find themselves in the asshole quadrant. It's easier for them to move up to high caring, but maintain directness. The difficulty is for those coaches and consultants that find themselves on the other side of the spectrum, which is being ruinously empathetic, which is, I really do care, but I care so much about my own feelings in this that it's very difficult and awkward for me and embarrassing for me. I'm not willing to risk the relationship and say what needs to be said. Now, the harsh truth of this is that you're an amateur in that box, because the professional is the one that leaps over into radical candor for ruinous empathy. You're not being the best coach for your clients. You're actually letting your clients down by not saying what needs to be said. And I would also argue this, that you don't need to be able to do it perfectly at first. What you do need to do is step into it, right? So even if you don't feel like you're going to do it well, the fact that you did it is more important than getting the words right. Okay, it might not land right, you might not get it perfect, but stepping into the box, like overcoming that sort of impasse, is what the professional does. The way I look at it is, I care so much about your success and wanting you to win. I literally cannot sit here and watch you screw it up. I can't watch you do it. I have to say something, because if I let you do this now, 6 months from now, you're going to say, Chris, why didn't you tell me sooner? And that, I don't want to be that guy. That's not value. That's not it. Right. So I'm not going to sweep it under the carpet. I'm not going to let it slide. I have to say it. But what's so interesting about this is there's an inverse relationship with this. People say to me, I don't want to have that difficult conversation because I'm worried about risking the relationship. I'm worried about pissing somebody off. And I'm worried about like the relationship falling apart. And what's interesting is there's an inverse relationship with it, in that the reason the relationship will fall apart is because you're not willing to have difficult conversations. The number of difficult conversations you've had with your client will determine the strength of the relationship. And so understanding that helps us to say, all right, okay, actually, this is what I'm here to do. I'm supposed to do this. I better get good at it, right? And learn the skills of how to have these difficult conversations. And even more advanced, how to proactively introduce tension into the relationship for their own betterment, their own results. And so I think it's our job to get ahead of problems before they become problems, see what's going to happen if they do this thing now, say what needs to be said so we can get ahead of it. And then if we do that and we have these difficult conversations with our clients, it's actually an opportunity to galvanize our relationship with our clients and grow stronger together. And by avoiding it, you're actually diminishing the potential for that relationship to be great.
Yeah. Better to have those missteps on the journey to growth and directness than to stay where you are and not be someone who's actually challenging your clients the way that they need to be. I think Angie and I might need to get hold of that app, the asshole checker app.
I was
Yeah,
just
she
gonna
said-
say, like,
yeah.
I am such an asshole. But I'm not. I'm a loving asshole. And usually when I'm going to be in a bigger asshole, I will ask for permission. I will call it an alternative perspective, perhaps, or ask permission. May I ask? But yeah, I need the app. I need the app.
No,
for
I need
sure.
that. I need that for my emails because I'm just like straight to business. I do not dress up. I don't do small talk. I'm
Yeah.
like straight to business
Yeah.
with my emails, and I think sometimes that can come across a little impersonal. Maybe I
Well, the
could do with that.
relationship's important as well, right? The
Yeah.
dynamic of the
Sure.
relationship. Hell, you do get away with a lot with people who know exactly what to expect from you. So it's just like we talked about already. There's the dynamics, there's the intuitiveness of it all, and there's just, I think, also being smart about it, right? Knowing that communication is a skill, and then knowing that you could always be better. I think a lot of people sit in this camp where they think they're okay at communicating, like it doesn't need work, and it's like, you're insane. If you're a leader or you're a leader of people or a coach, I just say coach consultants, we're all leading people towards something. Communication is like 90% of the work. You've got to be constantly working on improving in that area. And I think it's like conversations like this, I think, can help inspire people to perhaps figure out where their gap is and shine a light on maybe where they need to improve or develop.
Yeah, so many avenues we could go down with this conversation, but I wish we had more time.
Yeah. On and on.
However, yeah, it could go on and on. But let me ask you, just to start to put a bow on what we've been talking about today
Sure.
as best we can. If you're moving away from consulting, you're moving away from the people pleasing, you're having more candor with your clients and challenging them in this healthy ways. What are the signs in your experience as a coach that things are going in the right direction there, and maybe even some of the guiding principles to help you stay on track with that?
So what are the signs that it's going in the right direction? What does success look like?
Yeah.
I think this idea of indispensability is important. I think there's two things that come to mind right away: indispensability and breakthroughs. Those are the two things I think that seem like a clear way to measure success. So, for example, the clients are coming to you increasingly with more strategic, high-level decision-making problems, right? The problems are getting bigger, more high stakes. They trust you with your opinion, your guidance, your advice to work through difficult situations, right? I've got a client just now that just emailed me before our session today with a wicked problem. And to me, that's a signal that she wants to work on bigger problems with me. And that's really cool. I love that. I don't want to be a bottleneck in her process. I want to be a liberating force, right? So I don't want her to be like, oh, I better check with Chris before I do so. It's not that. It's that she's bringing deeper, meaningful problems to the table. And that's a signal to me that our relationship is continuing to grow and develop. And then the other one's breakthroughs. Like your clients you can't manufacture these, of course. You can just create the conditions that hopefully they'll happen, but your clients are just doing their best work. They're having some real level up, like in certain situations, and they're having breakthroughs. They're having conversations with you that they just never have with other people, and they're figuring out a lot about themselves. Those are the two things that jump to mind to me. But I also feel like there's I have to go here, which is like there's an internal check-in, temperature check on me. Am I going to sleep at night feeling like I'm being my authentic self? And I know that word, it gets bandied around a lot, but I mean it in a sort of serious way. Am I able to be me in all of this? And I think there's maybe always something to work on there. But I think as that increases, you get towards being just me and allowing me to be me, I think you become a more valuable resource for people when you're being honest, like to yourself, that you're doing what you want to do. You're staying in your integrity with your intention, and you're just allowing yourself to be you in all of this as well. I think that's the internal measurement of success, is that, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the sort of happiness. Happiness, is that the right word? Yeah, like it's happiness about it all. Like I feel relaxed, I feel good, I feel like I'm in the zone. I'm feeling like I'm working with the right people and the right things. The work's meaningful. It feels important. I think those are all internal temperature checks as well, John, that I think we need to always check in on to.
Yeah, always, for sure.
Excellent
Question.
It does. But The Authoritative Coach is available in multiple formats. I highly recommend the audiobook personally. I really enjoyed that. But I have been looking at the ebook version as well, especially for a bit of prep for today's conversation. But there's loads of good stuff in there that's going to help anyone who's developing themselves as a coach and wants to have more authority. Other than getting hold of the book, Chris, is there any other way that you might want people to get in touch with you?
There's two things I think. If you're saying to yourself, I'm not sure if I am a people pleaser, there's a good chance that it's manifesting itself in some way in your work. I have actually got an assessment that people can do. It's called the People Pleaser's Path to Authority. And I'm sure we could probably put a link in that in the show notes for people to click through to that. And it's just 20 questions that help you show up in 5 different areas, which are things like boundaries, role clarity, client delegation, things that we've been talking around today actually. Show up, like, where am I being a people pleaser in the work that I'm doing? And then, of course, if people just want to tap into what's happening right now in Chris Marr's world, the best place is Instagram at The Authoritative Coach. And you'll see videos there. And I'm pretty accessible there as well. You can DM me and I'll reply. That's probably the best place to hang out.
Awesome. It's certainly been our pleasure having you as our very first ever guest on the Coaching Clinic. So we appreciate you coming and doing that. It's been a really fascinating conversation. The good thing with that quiz is I'm curious. I actually want to go and check that out. Oh, how much of a people pleaser am I? Because I know it's something that I've struggled with in the past as well. So definitely we'll have a link to that in the show notes for people to go and check it out and to get in contact with you as well. And certainly recommend getting hold of a copy of the book.
Do you have a question for the Coaching Clinic?
Reach out on LinkedIn to connect with Angie and John.
Leave us a voicemail or video message and we will feature you on the show.
You can also leave up to 90-second voicemail for free on www.speakpipe.com/The Coaching Clinic podcast.
We'd love to hear from you.
See you next time.
Bye for now.